All right. Are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Okay. Well, we're back for some more interviews with Eric Wheeler, and the first question today is, how old were you when you started using, and why?
I was probably, it was the beginning of my 7th grade, so I was 11, maybe almost 12 at the time I first started using. Started smoking marijuana, and kind of led to other things, as they say. It's kind of textbook. Went into speed, and into cocaine, into hashish, mushrooms, acid, just about all of the usual suspects.
And how old were you when you were sexually abused?
That was a little bit before then, so I was about a little before I was 11, or right at 11 when it was before I went into 7th grade. So it was pretty much the summer, or right at the end of my 6th grade.
How did the sexual abuse affect your physical, emotional, and social development?
I don't know so much about the physical, except for I tended to be kind of extreme into the physical things I got into. I got into working out afterwards. I was always heavy into cycling, so I didn't actually get a driver's license till I was 19, so I didn't get my first car until I was 19 because I just really didn't need it. I could ride anywhere in town that I needed to. My emotional, I don't know, kind of, it's a difficult question as far as, it definitely kept me from being able to get close to other people. I mean, the emotional intimacy and trust was kind of delayed and developing for quite some time. The other part of the question was
social development.
Social? I don't know. I just never really joined too many groups. Never really got close to any people. I tended to hang out with people who were like me. You know, the cigarette smokers, the marijuana smokers, the people who were doing drugs, people that generally didn't have a genuine access to their emotional life. I don't know if that really makes sense. Intellectuals, people who thought about how they felt instead of thinking about how they feel.
Time-wise, there's certainly a connection between your sexual abuse and your drug abuse. What connection do you see between your drug abuse and your sexual abuse?
I see just the parallels and how it started out with something, I say simple, something, and then got progressively worse. But with the drugs, I wasn't able to pull back and say, oh, that's too much, I'm not going to go there. And I was able to, with the sexual abuse, because I had this pretty much stereotypical ideal of, man and woman, eventually having kids, that kind of thing. And I wanted to be close in a lot of relationships, and just the trust just wasn't there. It was like a bridge that I wasn't willing to cross yet.
How did the sexual abuse affect your self-worth and identity?
I don't know, man. I think that my self-worth, it was like, I can relate that to when I first got sober. I remember sitting in some of the anonymous meetings and thinking to myself, well, maybe other people are worth saving, but not me, majority of my, junior high and high school and early life it was kind of like living beside, like it was happening to somebody else in a lot of instances. So just kind of beside myself. I don't know. There's only a few. I hope there's only a few people who understand how that feels, but that's the reason I'm doing these videos, is for people who do understand how that feels. Just to be kind of beside yourself, like experiencing your own life vicariously.
And what helped you seek recovery from alcohol and drugs?
Well, they stopped working. They stopped doing for me what it had done for me before. I mean, it used to be that I could escape. It used to be I could go to that place of oblivion and didn't necessarily feel good, just didn't feel anything. But I got introduced to some people who were in recovery, some people who told my story, some people who understood exactly how I felt, and it's kind of one of the sayings we have. It just kind of screwed up my using and drinking. It just, I knew that that people had experienced some of the things that I'd experienced, and they were doing something different. So I knew, there was a way out, and there was something else that I could have if I were willing to work for it. So.
Which came first, your recovery from alcohol and drugs, or your recovery from your sexual abuse?
I think that alcohol and drugs came first. I was thinking about that stuff, and I had talked to a few of the LCDC counselors that were there when I first got sober, and normally I don't take advice, but for some reason I had formed a trust with a few of those counselors, and they were like, look, first you need to learn how to stay sober. First you need to, go to work, go to your probation, go to AA meetings, learn how to be sober as an adult, because I hadn't had any experience in sobriety as an adult. I started using at 11, and it was, for the most part, continuous until I was 28 years old. So there was the few breaks that I had of sobriety, 3 or 4 months, were times that was incarcerated in county jail. So.
What in turn then led you to seek help and healing from sexual abuse?
I was misdiagnosed as bipolar when I got sober, and they had me on lithium and some other antidepressant medications, and it seems like they kind of stopped working too once I started getting into started going into counseling for the sexual abuse. And then I kind of got faced with a really tough decision. The medications were causing more trouble than they were supposedly doing to help, and I wasn't fully convinced that I have some chemical imbalance that I need to be medicated for the rest of my life. I thought, wow, the rest of my life seems like a really long time. And at that point, I had to, in meditation with God, I said, look, okay, if I really need these medications, I'll go back on them. But I need to know for sure, and I need to know if, nutrition and exercise and continuing with a spiritual type of life, if I actually need them or not. And I got off of those in 2005.